Welcome to Teachers Talking Teaching, where we celebrate and elevate the art of teaching.
We're back this week with a high school English teacher and computer science, Stacy Ruffer. So Stacy, welcome.
Thank you.
We're glad you could join us this week.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Tracy and Stacy, not to be confused this week.
Sure.
We all have different spellings as well, which I noticed. But we would love to hear your teaching origin story. So how did you get into this amazing profession?
Yeah, thanks. I grew up as a farmer in Ohio, and neither of my parents went to a four-year school. My dad was a farmer and a truck driver, and my mom was a nurse. But my mom was a huge reader. And one of my favorite memories that I was fortunate enough to share with my own kids is reading The Hobbit out loud to them. And I remember just listening to it again and again and wanting her to read it to me again, and then getting into Lord of the Rings, and kind of that started my love of reading. I ran track in college, and eventually, or in high school, and then ran in college as well. And so I was able to kind of leave Ohio, went to the University of Pittsburgh, and didn't quite know what I wanted to do at first. I was kind of leaning in towards math. I liked English. And I asked myself the question, like, which would I want to do for the next 30 years? Will I get bored with math, or can I always talk books? And I was like, oh, well, books is clearly the answer. So met my wife while in college and did my student teaching right outside the city of Pittsburgh. I got my master's in English education, also at the University of Pittsburgh, and had my first job opportunity in California. I traveled there for vacation in high school. My wife lived in San Clemente with her brother in the summers. And so we thought, let's go LA, Orange County for a couple years and be beach bums and teach. And then, ended up being there for 14 years. So my first job is I taught middle school right outside of Los Angeles in a city called Fullerton. Very different experience from growing up middle of nowhere, Ohio, 95% Latino, 100% free and reduced lunch, just a very different experience. So I taught middle school there for a couple years. I knew I wanted to get into coaching, after running track for all those years. And so I had an opportunity to move to a high school in South Orange County called Tesoro High School. Very similar to the high school that I teach at now, and very large. I think it had 3,400 kids, which the small town I grew up had 1,200. So that was a little bit different for me. Taught there for 10 years, and while I was there, decided I want to keep learning. So I got my master's in literature from UC Irvine. With focus on Faulkner. We were talking about love for British, but I chose a good American. And then after about 10 or 11 years at that school, my wife's work had an opportunity to move here to Colorado. And so moved here and taught at Greeley West High School for a couple years. And now I'm here in Fort Collins, teaching high school again. So that's what got me here.
And I'm fascinated about we got to hear at some point about the computer science.
Sure.
Like, how does an English teacher, not that everybody doesn't love all sorts of subjects, but it's such an interesting combo.
Yeah, well, it was not something I necessarily was planning out. Probably about 5 or 6 years ago, the person that was teaching computer science at our school left. And our principal kind of put out an all call like, hey, who wants to get paid to go to a training and learn computer science? And at that point, I think I was about 18, 19 years in. And I was like, you know what? If I want to do this for another 18, 19 years, maybe let's try mixing something up. And not knowing if I would even teach any classes, but just to try something new. So there's a really great organization called code.org. They run free online curriculum all the way from elementary school up through different high school curriculums. And the whole reason they got started was the guy who runs the organization kind of looked around in Silicon Valley and said, I'm surrounded by mostly white and Asian men. And he said, this is not a good way to run any sort of company. We need other voices. Something's going wrong in our schools, that this is all we have. And so he actually reached out to College Board and said, what's your level of computer science class? They're like, we have one, AP Computer Science A. And that is kind of our top level class. And if you're not already programming, or your parents don't already work for a computer science company, it was a really hard threshold. So he worked with College Board to kind of create a new curriculum that was a gateway in computer science. So to get more ethnicities in, to get more women in. And it was a huge nonprofit, and they were able to pay teachers to go. And so I did a couple week training one summer, and then taught the class for about 4 years ago, and then another couple week training the summer after that. And so I've taught that one for about 5 or 6 years. And in the process, the program has really grown a lot at Fossil. We're surrounded by a lot of tech companies, and so it's kind of strange that we didn't already have a whole bunch of computer science classes. And so we just started growing it. And now about 90% of my classes are computer science. I have four AP computer science classes, 2 of the principals and 2 of the top one, and then a couple intro classes as well. Almost now at this point more than I can handle. So I'm kind of recruiting one of the math guys to come in and take at least the intro classes away, because I still have that love of literature, and I would really miss not teaching any English. And so now I teach mostly computer science, and I also teach some front range community college classes at our school site as well, which it's a nice mix.
Yeah. So you found a way to get to be a math teacher and a language arts teacher.
Sure.
When I think about that journey that you talked about, debating, which one am I more interested in, that eventually you found a way to bring them both together. How does that look for your day, that you have to kind of switch between, teaching literature to then teaching coding? What does that look like for you?
Sure. Trying to explain it to my English colleagues who are like, what's wrong with you? What happened? How have you betrayed us? My argument is that the computer science, because it's not naturally in my wheelhouse. Like I have to work at that one. If I had to tomorrow, someone's like, hey, you're teaching Roman Juliet. I'm like, got it. Like I've done this 25 times. I'm good. But they're like, hey, we're teaching 2D arrays. And I'm like, I need to remember how to do that.
Yeah.
Right? And so I really feel it's working a different part of my brain. I feel like the benefits and what's kind of keeping me fresh as a teacher is the prep for computer science is a lot, but the grading is great. For English, the prep is pretty little at this point, and the grading destroys me. And so it's a really neat balance that I feel like it can keep me fresh for the next 10 or 15 years of my career.
And I think that's kind of something that we've talked about, is like preventing teacher burnout, like, switching things up from time to time, taking, different courses. Like, it seems like you're sort of a lifelong student. You've had lots of, university experiences, and now this experience. Can you talk a little bit about, what keeps you fresh and interested in coming back every day?
Yeah, I like kids, I mean, my favorite part is finding a kid who has something interesting to say, and just kind of sharing, not even what we're talking about in class, though that's part of it, but talking movies with kids, or, I've almost all seniors this year. And so like right now I'm very jealous, because I'm like, you guys are about to have the next 4 or 5 really fun years. And it's interesting to find out where they're going. Right. And I really love that part of it. I have a son who's a freshman in high school now too. And, I'm kind of excited he's at the same school I'm at, which is kind of a neat adventure as well, kind of seeing it from both the parent and student, or parent, teacher, and his student perspective all at the same time. And I think that part's really fun. As for like being a lifelong learner, I think the computer science thing, which I had so little experience with, it's opened up like, oh, this is something that I can see my kid getting into, because he really seems to like it as well, right? Or talking to kids about, I love talking books with kids, but also when kids get really excited about programming and they're like, I want to do this, and let me show you this product that I was creating. It's just really neat to see kids from different angles, and you also get different sorts of kids. The kids, I taught AP Lit in California for 11 years, and those are different conversations and different kids than the kids that are taking my AP Computer Science A class, right? Sure. Both all very smart for different reasons, but very different sorts of kids. And it's neat having a mix of kids who are like, hey, let's talk about this book we read in class, and I love the themes, versus like, hey, look at this program I made. Let me explain it to you, because I don't understand it. Because I get those kids, they're so far beyond me. And it's just a neat way of kind of talking to kids and communicating to kids in different ways.
Great opportunity to, like you said, learn from kids, to show them that, like, I'm a student as much as you're a student.
Sure.
Right. And also to be a model for kids, like you don't have to have like a singular path, when you leave high school. Like, you have focus in one area, but it can broaden and expand over the years as you grow professionally.
Yeah. One of my favorite students this year, and we talked earlier about being at a really big high school. There's so many kids you just don't know. But I've had this one girl student who I've gotten lucky and I've had her like 6 times. It's just really worked out perfectly. And she told me, she's like, I'm going to be a literature major and a computer science major in college. And I was kind of like, that doesn't work. but I was like, we had a guest speaker from HP come in and he talked about there's a million kids out there that can just crank out code.
Yeah.
But the kids that also have a sciencey background or a literature or humanities background, and then bringing that in, like a lot of companies are like, oh, you're something that we need because you can talk to people.
Yeah.
And so that part has been really neat, kind of seeing different kids grow in different directions. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a fun thing.
Well, you also do the community college classes, but you teach at the high school.
Right.
So you've gone from the AP world to the community college English world.
Sure.
So is there a perk or things you like about one versus the other, and to be fair, regular English classes in high school too. So.
I mean, I don't think it would be fair as a teacher to only do AP or to only do just a regular class, because there's benefits and very big frustrations with both of those, right? If I had only AP, I would be spoiled. I would get soft. I'd forget how to deal with difficult kids. If I had only regular, I would get frustrated because I'd be too busy dealing with difficult kids, right? So it's got to be a good combination of both. I really like the concurrent enrollment, is what we call it at our school, option for kids. And again, selfishly seeing my kid come through, I'm like, you know how many college credits you can get at a time you're out of high school? Like you can be like a sophomore going into college easily. I like the challenge of the AP classes. A lot of teachers I know get frustrated with like, oh, we're teaching towards a test, but I'm like, oh, but it's also kind of a game too. Right? Like, how can we answer these questions? We're still talking about literature and we're doing deep dives in literature, or in CSA, they're still learning how to write code, where that test really helps me as a teacher, especially coming in as a new one. Like, what do I need to make sure that when this kid walks out of class that I've put him or her in a good place where they can sit down, take that AP test, and have a shot. So that's the part I liked about the AP. I do like the front range ones because you get a really neat mix of kids. The top 4%, they're pulled off, they're all AP all the way, right? So the kids that take the front range classes, they're kind of a good mix. They're kids who are like, you know what, I've taken enough like insane hard AP classes. I want to take a little bit of a step down and get some college credit. Or you have kids that like only taken regular English all the way through. They're like, you know what? I'm going to challenge myself a little bit, and this is a little bit out of my comfort zone. And so, like teaching any high school class, you have a pretty big gap with students, right? And so even though we think, oh, community college, but there's a gap of kids who struggle to write and kids who should easily be an AP Lit, right? So it's kind of neat just taking them through it. Having seniors in that class is also nice because they get like, oh, I need to be ready. And so there's no kids who are just messing around. They're all like, I'm going to college next week or next year, and I have to know how to write, and I don't have it yet. And so they're like, tell me, please. So it's kind of a good experience because they're motivated. And they're like, I want to know how to do it because I know I have to do it really soon on my own.
Yeah.
Well, Stacy, thank you so much for sharing your origin story. We are fascinated by how you're able to make the literature world and the coding world come together in one magical education space.
Thank you.
If you liked what you heard today, go to our Facebook page and like and subscribe. You can also go to YouTube and join our YouTube channel, as well as listen to us on your favorite podcasting app.